Welcome to another episode of Altitude Advantage. I am your team reporter and host, Elisa Hernandez, alongside the lead writer of DenverBroncos.com, Aric DiLalla. It is divisional week. The Broncos hosting their first divisional game of the season as the Raiders come to town. Pretty excited about this weekend. Back-to-back home games. I'm excited to get things going.
Yeah, there's a lot to be excited about, I think, this weekend, Elisa. It's nice to have a home game. It's been a little bit here. Obviously, the Broncos' second home game of the season. There's a lot that fans are going to see at this game. The Broncos are obviously wearing their throwback uniforms for the very first time. We'll talk about that and everything that you can expect if you're coming to Empower Field at Mile High this weekend. But it's also just a great opportunity for this team to get to 3-2, earn their third consecutive win, beat the Raiders, get off to a good start in the division. We'll get into all that and kind of what it would mean to beat the Raiders. But 8 straight losses to Las Vegas. The Broncos have still never beaten the Las Vegas Raiders. And so definitely a lot at stake this weekend. Excited to dive into it today.
Yeah, we're going to dive into all that good stuff. There's so much to unpack in this show. But the first thing we like to unpack is the comments. I know we have some good ones lined up, right?
That's right. Yeah, every week we post the show on our official YouTube page, Denver Broncos official YouTube, and you can leave a comment, you can leave a question, anything like that. We will read it here on the air, and let's get to it. Robert Barlow, this is from our Thursday show last week when we were still in West Virginia. Only a week ago, Elisa, we were there. We were in the rolling hills of the Mid-Atlantic.
Life as few know it.
That's right. It's beautiful out there. Robert Barlow said, Alex Singleton is a captain for captains. Who tears their ACL in the first quarter and plays every snap to the end? Just wow. Gladiator. I think we can both agree with that. That is very true. That performance against the Bucs was impressive. And
it left everybody speechless, honestly.
It did, yeah. I think everybody was impressed. And then we were impressed by the way the guys filled in against the Jets. Justin Cernad, Cody Barton, those guys played well too. So excited to see how they keep it moving forward here against the Raiders, who got their run game going a little bit. We'll talk about that more. But yeah, Alex Singleton, I wanted to read that one because it was pretty impressive.
Shout out to the captain.
Yeah. Erica Marafuo. Sorry, Erica.
If you're watching this on YouTube, I hope you saw Eric's face like shiver, like, I don't know if I said that right.
Marafo. I think that was wrong, too. Love the show. You guys are an awesome duo. Shout out to y'all. Thanks for keeping Broncos fans up to date. We appreciate you. Jay Barson said, used to go to the games in San Diego. Loved hearing the Let's Go Broncos chant at the end. Let's get more of that. We were talking, of course, last week about opposing stadiums where the Broncos fans, where Broncos country really shows up. Michael Ronquillo, Eric and Elisa are going to be a great duo for Altitude Advantage. Go Bo Broncos. I like that. Bo Broncos. Interesting.
Very creative.
Yeah.
Very creative.
Shoot to thrill. Sorry to, I bet. I'm just so excited. I'm just
shoot to thrill. Let's get it.
Any chair is a rocking chair if you believe. It's true. That's what we said last week on the on Altitude Advantage as we were on the porch. This one doesn't really rock as much, but according to Shoot to Thrill, if you believe, then it's possible. Monica says, yo, Eric, like the shirt way to rock the Broncos gear. I didn't mean it in a mean way. I've been watching you two, and I was just like, hey, Elisa's rocking blue and orange, and Eric was a no-show. Me and the fam love the show, bro. Good vibes. Okay, Monica, we can have a truce there. You, of course, have the throwback gear there.
Yeah, it's throwback week.
That's from Aaron Andrews?
Yes, it's from Aaron Andrews' wear line. Really excited for it. It's really nice. It's really warm.
Yeah, mine must have gotten lost. That's kind of weird. Huh. Martin C4 says, for the pronunciation of Charleston, there's a Charlestown in northeastern West Virginia. Perhaps the confusion comes from there. That's probably what happened.
That's totally what happened.
That's absolutely
completely
what happened. Robert Barlow also says, I have a question for Elisa. Do you wear the glasses just for fashion?
They're actually blue light glasses.
Oh.
So since I'm staring at screens a lot, I wear them to protect my eyes. But yeah, I was a glasses girly for a long time.
Yeah,
I got that taken care of, and now I'm a Blu-ray glasses girly.
Blu-ray?
Well, I don't know. Blue Shield, whatever it's called. Anyways, I'm protecting my eyes.
Blue Cross Blue Shield, not the official insurance of the Denver Broncos. Robert Barlow,
Onion.
gosh, this guy, Robert, thank you for all the comments. Mustard would burn to drown in. No bueno, is what he says.
I mean, if I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out with a bang. So.
I think mayo is still worse. We talked about that last week. Brandon Bunch said, y'all see Mothman out there in West Virginia. I don't know what that is, but I don't think I want to see that.
I purposely stayed indoors after 8 o'clock.
Do you know what Mothman is?
We don't speak of him.
Okay.
It's like you don't talk about Bruno, you don't talk about Mothman.
Got it. All right, no fun questions this week, just some comments. So step it up next week. No one to even really get mad at or take shots at. So that's also disappointing.
It must be so hard that everyone just loves you, Aric. I'm so sorry about that.
No,
I'm sorry they annoyed you with their friendship.
That's true. Let me see if I can find one where they're grumpy.
Well, while you're looking for that, we do have to give a very special shout out to Antonio. That is my...
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that is my 4-year-old nephew. We joke and call him Antonio Bandera. He's been watching the show. He actually been watching Going to Sleep. So Antonio, my love, I love you. Thank you so much for watching. Aric, he's a big fan of yours, apparently.
I'm kind of offended that he watches it going to sleep. That kind of means it's boring, right?
It soothes him. It soothes him. He's
okay.
a 4-year-old. You know how hard it is to keep an attention of a 4-year-old?
Yeah.
And he just watches on his little tablet.
Multiple times.
He's watched Broncos weekend. My brother has sent me photos from California. So
Wow.
Antonio, I'll be home soon to pick you up from school. But yeah.
Leave a comment, Antonio.
Well, he's still learning his letters, so you
can just type some. Just hit the keyboard and press send.
All right, Antonio, you got your orders. Make sure I'm shouting out my brother Tony. Make sure Antonio leaves a comment for us. But yes, Anthony is a big fan of the show, big fan of Broncos weekend. He's getting our numbers up, and he watches Broncos in 60 on YouTube.
Well, there's so much content. I mean, it's hard to choose what to watch, really. But yeah, leave a comment. And we'll read it here next week on Thursday. Yes. Hopefully, we'll be reacting to another win.
Yes.
Prepping to try to go for 4 in a row. But before we can do that, you got to get to 3, right?
That is very, very true. And one of my favorite things of my nephew watching the show is when he was like, oh, look, there's Auntie Ellie. And he looks back at my brother. He goes, I don't really know who that guy is. And you know what, though? People in New York knew who you were because when we were outside doing instant analysis, once again, we hear the Aric chants. You think "Go Broncos" is loud. Wait till you see the Aric chants.
This is not true.
That's very
true.
It's very
but
true.
I appreciate the support.
Because you know what? Everyone likes to hear your analysis, especially going into divisional week. Again, back-to-back road wins, and the team gets back to 500. We talked to the guys a little bit, and I asked them, how beneficial is it to now get that business trip done, 2-0 on that business trip, and be able to come home for back-to-back home games. Now, we're going to get into the fun of throwback and all that stuff, but just from that perspective, to be home, how beneficial is that?
Well, let's start with what it means to be here at 2-2 as opposed to 1-3.
Yeah.
We got some numbers, got the math. I need my glasses here to
I told
do
you.
some stats.
You know what? Next episode, I'm going to have some glasses for you.
Okay. I'm ready for that. Teams that start 1-3 since 1990, only 14% of them have made the playoffs.
Wow.
2-2 teams, 37%. So it's still not like where you want to be yet, but that's a big difference there, 23%. You then go to week 5. Teams that start 3-2 are about 49.7%. 49.7% of those teams have made the playoffs. 25% of those teams have won their division. 2 and 3 teams on the flip side, speaking to how important this week is, that drops to 23% of those teams make the playoffs and 9% win their division. So the Broncos, with their last 2 wins, have really put themselves in a spot where this is possible. Long way to go. Really long way to go. Sean Payton said Wednesday, he likes this saying, there's a fine line between a groove and a rut. And he talked about it last year a lot, especially when the Broncos started 1-5. Said it takes some mental toughness to get out of that hole. And then it takes, you can then get in a groove there where you're winning 5 in a row. But there's a fine line, he says. You can easily go from one to the other. He did make it clear the Broncos were not in a rut when they started 0-2. I see that perspective, right? They were still competitive, especially in Seattle. Very close game. But he also doesn't think they're in a groove yet. And to get into a groove, or rather, I think if you get a win this week, you get one step closer to that groove. 3-2, it would be, I believe, the latest in the season the Broncos are above 500 since 2021. when the Broncos started 3-0 in Vic Fangio's final season. Obviously a tough start last year. The year before that, tough start as well. So obviously 2021 isn't that long ago, and 3-2 is not 5-0, but I think it speaks to just the strides that this team could make. The Broncos have not finished above 500 in the division, Elisa, since 2015. Okay. So that's been a long time.
A minute.
And so this game against the Raiders is important because you can take that next step and get that first division win, end that 8-game streak to the Raiders, work toward having that winning record and continuing to build on a 2-game win streak. All of those things are possible this weekend when you take on the Raiders.
Yeah, and head coach Sean Payton also mentioned that he spoke to the team extensively about how important October is.
Yep.
And how important it is to get the run game going. And he said he was very pleased with the way that things had been progressing. He credited his defense and that he believes the last 2 weeks are the best that they've defended the run and they've run the ball. So I think having those two tandems working together, as well as Bo kind of getting his footing, and we'll get into Bo in a second, but it is really important, especially in October. You have 4 weeks of tape that you're able to look at, and Payton talked about the importance of that and be able to actually being able to put in the work to fix the things that they felt were wrong in the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in year 2, you see like the Broncos are still building and they're still working toward where they want to get to, but I think you're starting to see more and more of like what a Sean Payton program looks like.
Yeah.
Last year he talked about, hey, the first 4 weeks of the season are a race to improve, right? But the Broncos started 1-5, and so you hear that message, but it's unclear maybe like how much did the Broncos improve during those 4 weeks. This year, same message, first 4 weeks are a race to improve, but you saw very clearly the evidence of 0-2 to 2-2. And it's not just the results, right? It's that in Tampa, the offense looked a lot better. And to some degree, we're tossing out the rain-impacted game against the Jets from an offensive standpoint, though right. I do think in the second half, the offense did what it needed to do, but you see the strides there in the run game. You see the strides defending the run. You see the pass rush get going. You see the secondary continue to grow. So when he talks about the race to improve in the first 4 weeks, you see that firsthand and you see it happening. Now, his message last year as well was, hey, the month of October is really important. The Broncos started to get things going in October last year, still had a couple of tough losses there. Maybe you see a similar step being made where the Broncos are able to string some wins together here in October and start to build a playoff resume, if you will. But he's right. I mean, you don't ever want to say, like, you have to do this to make the playoffs, right? Because I looked at the start of the season and I thought, okay, the Broncos probably need to start 2-2 to be in a good spot. But I would not have guessed that it would have unfolded with 2 losses in a row and then 2 wins over the Bucs and Jets on the road. I just wouldn't have guessed that would have been the way that it unfolded. And so, I don't want to just say, like, you have to do this, but 3 of the next 4 are at home. Yeah. You play a Raiders team that's 2-2 that is dealing with some injuries as we're recording this. We don't expect Devontae Adams to play, Max Crosby to not practice Wednesday or Thursday. There's a whole bunch of guys that also didn't practice the first 2 days of the week. You face a Chargers team that you've had some success with or against at home. Yeah. You obviously that New Orleans road game is going to be very emotional, I'm sure. Yeah. A tough place to play, and then you welcome a Panthers team that has struggled a little bit too. So you don't ever want to project, and every game in the NFL is difficult. But the Broncos, with 3 of their next 4 at home, and you mentioned this, the 2 divisional opponents. You kind of got to get it going a little bit here, and this is an opportunity over the next month for the Broncos to start making some hay. Yeah, when Payton talked to the media after practice, one of my favorite things that he said was they asked him about, just the uncertainty of certain players playing on Sunday, or, how do you prepare? And he quoted a story that from 2013, and he said, look, there was a time when I believe he said DeMarcus Ware was not practicing, and they went into the plan thinking that he wasn't going to play. Next thing you know, Saturday comes, he's active. He has like a couple of sacks, a forced fumble. And so he's like, it's a coaching lesson you learn early on in your career to never underestimate what's going to happen. You have to prepare for whoever, any scenario that can be on the field. I think a lot of the guys are really gravitating towards that. And with this being a divisional game, you've been very honest of Bo Nix's development, and you've
been able to kind of see, okay, he can improve here, but you've also been really good at highlighting the positives that have come from his, first couple of starts in the NFL. I mean, in week 4, he threw his first career passing touchdown. He had no interceptions. He had no sacks in that game as well. And Nix and Hall of Famer John Elway are the only rookie QBs in Broncos history to win consecutive starts on the road. So just, small little tallies that he can kind of add to his resume. But he's really kind of shown the ability to be a dual threat, being able to make plays, obviously with his arm, but with his legs too. Yeah,
let's talk about this offense. Let's talk about Bo.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Go. Let's Bo.
Let's Bo.
Yeah, I think, listen, it's easy to look at last week's performance, especially the first half, and be uncertain about kind of what the reasoning was for all that. I think when you watch it back, certainly some throws he'd like to have back.
Yeah.
I think the second half, as I mentioned a minute ago, was way better. The throw to Cortland Sutton was impressive. The dagger there on third down, obviously made a couple of other throws. I thought Troy Franklin should have drawn a PI call there on one of the deep shots. And then kind of did what it took. Obviously, the Broncos kind of changed their approach late in the game and wanted to run the ball a lot.
Yeah.
So, I would expect, and who knows what happens, right? But I would expect that you see a performance closer to what we saw in Tampa, which was seemed to me like it was starting to click and delivering throws in stride, finding his receivers quickly, making plays with his legs when needed. I would like to see, and who knows kind of what the my watch is just going crazy. Elisa, it's like so interested in what we're saying. It keeps trying to send a text message. Just stop it.
It's all the fans commenting.
I mean, something's happening. I don't like it, but something's happening. Anyway, the one area where he could maybe stand and improve a little bit is against pressure, right? He does have one of the lower passer ratings in the league against pressure. And that's not necessarily just the blitz. It's like when he's pressured. And so the line has done a good job, I think, for the most part of, he's not pressured at the highest rate or anything like that, but does have to find a way when pressured to make some of these plays. I think, at least that's just part of this learning process, right, of being a rookie quarterback, is that it's hard to play quarterback in this league. It's really hard when you're under pressure. And so finding the time to stay in the pocket, when to get out, those will be things that I think we'll continue to see him develop over the next few weeks. Obviously, it's easier if Max Crosby is not out there. So we'll see what happens with that. But Christian Wilkins from the interior is a really good rusher as well. And it's going to be a challenge for sure. But I think you saw him make steps in Tampa. And I would expect this week to be closer to that, especially if the run game continues to play well, especially if you see Cortland Sutton and Josh Reynolds continue to be big play threats there. But, everything we've seen from Bo, I think he's continuing to process it better. I think you're seeing that development. And, listen, if 4 weeks in you're worried about how he does under pressure, I just think it misses the mark that this is going to be a development. It's going to take some time. He's playing well enough right now that if he goes out and plays the way he did in week 3, the Broncos should definitely win this football game.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've seen, he is one of 6 quarterbacks this season with 100-plus rushing yards and 2+ rushing TDs. On that list, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, and Josh Allen. A lot of J's in there.
Yeah.
But, when you kind of see the way he's able to kind of maneuver outside of pressure, and he's able to kind of really see the field, whether he's throwing while he's on the run or just trying to get out the pocket, try to make a play. I caught up with Josh Reynolds earlier this week, and I asked him, he's been part of those big plays, 46-yard catches, 29-yard catches really kind of sparked this offense. And he said that, the more that they are out there, he's able to see Bo get more comfortable throwing the ball. And he said the big plays are going to come that way. You can catch that full interview on Broncos Weekend on Saturday. But one of the things he said is that after practice, him and Bo are working together. They're running extra routes after practice. And he talked about that in the interview, just saying, that's what it takes. It takes those moments after practice, that extra little effort, so that it translates into the game. Obviously, we see that Cortland Sutton and Bo Nix are getting better connection, hit him for that touchdown versus the Jets. And you just kind of see the guys are saying, like, okay, he's getting it. And they're so positive and happy for him. But they also realize, like, look, like, we can take advantage of the Raiders in this sense as well. The Raiders are ranked 24th in rushing defense, 21st in total defense so far this season. So when you have a dual threat like that, how does that give you an advantage, especially going into this AFC West rival?
Well, I think, and Sean Payton has talked about this a lot, in the rushing game now, if you have that quarterback that's a threat, it's an extra guy the defense has to worry about. And so it creates an extra responsibility of a guy that you've got to pick up. You can't just stack the box and not account for the guy under center. Certainly we saw last week the Broncos run some design runs, some RPOs. That sort of thing is probably just going to be part of, especially this year, like what Bo Nix does, and he's done it well. And we talked about pressure and we talked about running. Like, the one thing he didn't do, especially last week, is make losing plays. Like, there are winning plays, and I think that was the third down throw to Sutton on the dagger route. That's the touchdown throw. That's, against Tampa Bay, there are a couple of them too. Like, those are the winning plays.
Yeah.
But there's also, like, on the 2-minute drive, for example, in Tampa, like, some of those throws, those are winning throws. Mm-hmm. But there's also avoiding the losing throws or the losing plays. And Bo Nix has not been sacked in 2 weeks. He has not turned the ball over in 2 weeks. Yeah,
we're knocking on all the wood.
Yeah. But, like, that shows to me an understanding that is probably beyond his years as a rookie. And Sean Payton has talked a lot. We were sacked too many times last year. We took too many sacks, and it was a quarterback statistic. Yeah. And he said that over and over. And listen, I don't know how the Broncos' record is different this year or how that game against the Jets changes if you turn the ball over again or if you're sacked a bunch of times. But even though Aaron Rodgers threw for more yards, the fact that Bo wasn't sacked and Aaron Rodgers was sacked 5 times and some of those drives stalled out, especially important ones late, that matters. I will say also, it's hard to win as a rookie. Bo, this week with a win, will be the first rookie quarterback in franchise history to win 3 starts in a row.
Wow.
Which, it's kind of wild. Like, 3 is obviously not that big of a number, but, like,
when you look at the history of this team and all the quarterbacks have gone through it.
Yeah, and so, like, John Elway didn't win 3 in a row as a rookie. And so, and if you go back and look at his stats, and we've talked before about this, like, there are struggles. Yeah. And I know right now people are seeing Jaden Daniels thrive and that there's, like, this, you want, of course, to see your quarterback do that same thing, but winning is the goal here. And the last couple of weeks, they've been successful in that. I think if Bo Nix continues, again, to play turnover-free, mistake-free football, it'll be a little drier, hopefully make some more plays through the air. On Broncos weekend, which we recorded, kind of confusing, we recorded that before we recorded this, even though that gets posted Saturday and this gets posted Thursday.
It's called TV magic, folks.
Wild. But, like, we called game.
Yep.
And I won't spoil exactly who I picked because tease. But I do think Bo Nix is going to connect deep this week on a pass for the first time. I can see that happening. And that would be a really good sign, too, if you could get that passing game going a little bit. I saw a stat, the Broncos have not scored 30 points in quite a while. And so, can you find a way to, obviously you just want to win no matter how many points you score. But at some point here, if you can show that ability at least to get to the 30-point mark, that would be a big step in the right direction. And again, we'll see who's playing for the Raiders, because if Crosby's out there, it creates a whole different problem. Yeah. But this offense also, I think, Elisa, just especially running the football, like, they're starting to develop an identity. And I don't know that they had that identity last year or many of the last few years. It was just kind of like try to find a way to get it done. This offense feels like it has an identity of, like, try to run the football, let Bo make plays with his legs, and, like, by hitting these rhythm passes and play well, complement your defense, and win football games.
Yeah. Look, speaking of the run game, you have Javonte Williams, you have Jaleel McLaughlin in the backfield, and you're going to try to attack this Raiders line as much as you can. Again, whether Max Crosby plays or not is still up in the air. But you kind of are looking at the way that this team can kind of attack that. The Broncos backfield, they're one of two teams with 4+ players with 85+ yards in 2024. They're looking to kind of really attack. And I was pleased that, Sean Payton had mentioned that he saw the growth of the defense being able to stop the run, as well as the Broncos offense being able to get the ball going, because the Raiders are coming off one of their best rushing games of the season against the Cleveland Browns. And when you're, in past games, Josh Jacobs really had the Broncos numbers in that sense. He's now no longer here. He's with the Green Bay Packers. So that threat is gone. That threat is gone. But, when you have a team that is going to try to run the ball alongside, to really kind of score some points, you have this Broncos defense that's been really dominant, especially, as Sean Payton said, over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, this defense is playing as well, if not better, than any team in the league. And it's really everywhere, which is impressive. It's not like one guy is dominating. It is a bunch of different folks playing at a really high level. It's the D-line. It's JFM. It's Zach Allen. Yeah. It's DJ Jones. It is Justin Strnad filling in for Alex Singleton. It's Cody Barton. I think both of those guys played about as well as you can expect them to at inside backer. It's Pat Surtain, who's playing like Albert Breer said this week. Pat Surtain may not be the MVP, but he might be the best player in the league right now. And he said, I don't think there's anybody playing their position better than Pat Surtain is playing cornerback right now. He is just, we talked about it Monday too, but he's just locking people down. He's taking options away. It will be really interesting to see what his role is Sunday, especially, as we record this. Adam Schefter has reported that Davante Adams is not expected to play as he kind of rests his hamstring injury. Obviously, trade rumors are swirling around Davante Adams right now. If he doesn't play and Jacoby Myers becomes your number one guy, I'm interested, does Pat follow him? Does Pat just stay on his side of the field?
Right.
They like to use their tight ends. Brock Bowers is a guy that obviously the Broncos, or Sean Payton talked about how the Broncos liked him too. He's a joker type player, can do a lot of things in the passing game. It didn't sound like, based on what Surtain said Wednesday, that he was going to shadow Bowers.
Yeah.
But maybe you get some reps where he's matched up with him. And this to me feels like a game where the depth of your secondary matters. And I talked about the D-line, the inside linebackers, but I saw some Raiders fans say, hey, if Surtain shuts down Jacoby or takes on Jacoby, some of these other guys can eat against the rest of the secondary. Well, the way that Jaquan McMillan and Riley Moss have played the last couple of weeks, they're playing just as well as anybody. And Sean Payton said on Wednesday that he was talking to Greg Penner and George Payton and said, if you're watching the film, Riley Moss is having a heck of a year. He's playing really good football. I think this secondary is in a much better place. Obviously, last year, week one, Surtain kind of shut down Davante, and Jacoby Myers just had a day, ended up being the reason the Broncos lost that football game.
Yeah.
I feel much better about where the secondary is now compared to week one a year ago. Brandon Jones and P.J. Locke are playing well in the back end. So this defense is playing really well. I think you're right, Lisa, the way that the Raiders got the run going last week, 152 yards, I believe, after only having around 150 over the first 3 games of the season. It has to start for the Broncos by stopping the run. And then you can put pressure on Gardner Minshew. And Gardner Minshew, I think, obviously, he's come into Denver. I think it was 2019. He came in as a rookie and beat the Broncos. So, they should be aware of what he can do. But at the same time, if you can shut the run game down, put him in 3rd and long like you did to the Jets, and you did to the Buccaneers, and get after him, after what you've just done to Baker Mayfield and Aaron Rodgers, who are 2 quarterbacks playing as good as anybody in the league, let's see how Gardner Minshew handles that same sort of stress.
Yeah, and you look at this defensive line, Jonathan Cooper, talked about the way that they've been able to just really be aggressive, and it's really important, and they take a lot of pride in being able to stop the run and those things. Pat had said after the win in New York that when the defensive line plays the way they did, it makes his job that much easier. And so I, let Cooper know that Pat said that, and he, had a big smile on his face, and he said, Pat's outstanding. And then he stopped, and he was like, outstanding. Then he stopped again. He really wanted to emphasize that when we caught up with him after practice, because he's Pat makes everyone on this defense better. And he's someone that the way that he's playing, the way that he's basically put a clinic on how to guard the number one receivers in this league, he said it trickles down and where everybody feeds off of that energy and off of those plays. And Riley Moss is a guy that he's hungry to get better. And you look at the way that he's been able to play and the way that he's been able to, go up against guys like Chris Godwin and make certain plays there. He's had a couple PIs against him that he's, taken accountability for. But after practice, he said, I looked at my tape. It's good. It's not great. I can get better. And just the fact that he's not getting caught up in those things. He's just like, I need to get better for this team because I have to compliment Pat. And he talks about his relationship with Pat a lot and the way that they've really been able to kind of help each other. And having that complimentary on two sides of the ball, I feel like you can't learn from a better guy like Pat too.
No, absolutely not. And we'll see, Pat talks a lot about also being able to make those game-changing plays. If Pat can toss a few interceptions in here, you're going to be talking about him as a Defensive Player of the Year candidate as well as he's playing. I think, obviously, when you win, people take notice. And so when you shut Aaron Rodgers down and Garrett Wilson down, people notice. When you shut a 2-0 Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers down, people take note. So,
I got some notes on that since you brought it up. In week 4, Jets wide receiver Garrett Wilson lined up against Surtain on 60.9% of his routes. That's 28 of his 46 to be exact. And he was only able to get 2 of his 3 targets for 22 yards. And Wilson was held to 0 targets on his first 18 routes when he was aligned with Surtain. His first target against Surtain coming with 1:42 left in the third quarter.
Yeah, Surtain just took him out of the game. And it was impressive the way that he was able to do that.
That's a first-round draft pick wide receiver.
Good player. And I think it's also frustrating to go against Pat because, one, you're not getting open. They're also not looking at you in terms of the quarterback. So I'm sure it gets difficult every play to stay locked in and be ready for that opportunity. Pat has played really well. Riley, I appreciate the way that he bounces back from mistakes and challenges plays. I think in the past we've seen some corners, especially opposite Pat the last couple of years, where maybe they're not getting called for the penalties, but they're not in position to make the plays either, so they're giving up more catches. I kind of appreciate that, maybe Riley gets called for a penalty here or there, but he's in position to make plays, and he's also going to have 2 or 3 PBUs, right? Yeah. Because he's right there, or he's going to make sure that you don't catch a big one. So I like his mentality. He's a physical player the way that J-Mac is. This secondary is playing well. And again, it just changes what their offense can do without Davante Adams.
Yeah.
I saw a stat. I don't think anybody last week with Davante out for the Raiders had even 50 receiving yards.
Wow.
So that kind of speaks to, somebody is going to have to step up, but it'll be interesting to see who it is. Is it Myers? Is it Brock Bowers? No Raiders player with 50-plus receiving yards. Jacoby Myers led the team with 10 targets, 5 receptions, and 49 receiving yards. So, but again, it's got to start with the run game and putting Gardner Minshew in those 3rd and long scenarios. He's got a 77.3 completion percentage versus zone this year, which is 5th in the NFL, and then 46.2 versus man, which is 29th in the NFL. Broncos obviously like to bring pressure. They like to put those corners out there, play some man. So it'll be interesting to see. You never know. It's a week-to-week league, but I'm excited to see this defense get a chance to play at home with the crowd noise, get going, and hopefully stack another performance. They've been, the exception of the third quarter in Seattle, this defense has been pretty much locked down for a month. So let's keep it going.
You talk about that physicality and the way that these corners are able to really be aggressive when they play. That really comes from Vance Joseph. He really is proud that his team is able to play so physical. He's talked about that after practice, saying, I'd rather have a corner that's aggressive and physical because you're going against the top receivers in this league. Like across the board, when you look at the playmakers on each team, it's very hard to shut down anybody realistically. And what Pat's been able to do, what Riley's been able to do, what his defensive line's been able to do, shutting down really key players on the opposite side of the ball. Even when you look at that week 1 game, Geno Smith really couldn't get anything going in that first half. So setting that tone is really important for this team. And I think when we talked about earlier about the identity and how they're able to find their things, we've talked about it multiple times on this podcast. But the way that they preached about getting momentum back, it's easy to preach something and continue to preach it. But for them to preach that week 1 and then week 4, snatch momentum right back, especially when drives are stalling out, things like that. I think that really shows the growth of this team and the way that, week 1, they're saying like, okay, we lost momentum, we didn't get it back, and that really hurt us. We need to work on that. That's hard to work on because it's not a tangible thing, but it's all about the way that they were able to push through weather, able to push through, stall drives, able to push through, anything that was going on in the game to continue to get the momentum to swing back their way. Even with the missed kick, the Broncos defense went out there, made a really key stop, made a field goal that much harder for the Jets, which obviously led to the missed kick there, which won them the game. So I think that's really key.
Yeah, they've been good in that area. I think it's up to the offense too to capitalize when they can and make sure that you're not letting teams hang around. Like I think that's what was so impressive against Tampa, right? Is that Broncos had opportunities early. Boom, it's 14-0, it's 17-0.
Yeah.
And you put the game not away, but just far enough like out of reach that you don't give a team hope moving forward. Yeah. Whereas Seattle was the opposite, right? The Broncos had chances early, a lot of chances, couldn't do enough with it.
Right.
You're only up by a few points at halftime, end up losing the football game. I don't know if that's this week. Obviously, I think it is important to say we've talked all about the Raiders potentially missing Adams, Crosby, how their defense is 24th against the run, right? Like, it's still a division game, and you can kind of toss the records out the window and all the stats out the window when division rivals play each other. They have won 8 games in a row for a reason, and so the Broncos are going to have to be ready to go, similar to the way that, maybe the Bucs wish they didn't overlook the Broncos. Certainly the Broncos cannot do that to the Las Vegas Raiders. They got to be ready to go. Ready to play, because if not, you'll lose, and then you're 2-3, and you feel like, hey, everything we just did over the last 2 weeks, we just let it slip back because we weren't ready to go. So it's going to be a physical football game. I think you've got to try to impose your will, avoid turnovers, the things that we've seen the Broncos do the last couple of weeks in terms of play-winning football. Do that this weekend, and I think you'll end up in a pretty good spot. Again, you never know in a divisional game. It's just there's going to be momentum swings, and you got to ride the wave a little bit and find a way to come out on top.
Yeah, and Sean Payton definitely talked about, at halftime, understand, like, look, these games are good. This win is gritty, and going into halftime, being like, this is not going to be a high-scoring game, so how do we adjust that? You mentioned that they ran the ball a lot, and I think that's something that has trickled down because when we were in West Virginia, Joe Lombardi, offensive coordinator, mentioned, like, look, the guys that you have, the big runs are going to come. We just have to keep running the ball. That's the way to get these guys in rhythm, is to just find the way to do that. And I think the offensive line has done a really good job, especially when you lose some key guys. You lose Mike McGlinchey and you have Alex Palczewski kind of come in. And it's been a very seamless transition. You mentioned now on one of the podcasts, the fact that we haven't heard his name is probably the best thing that can, the best kind of compliment that he could have.
Yeah. So far, and granted, knock on wood, the team stays healthy because they have dealt with some injuries here this year, more so at this point than a year ago. But yeah, Alex Palczewski has filled in really well for Mike McGlinchey, and Justin Strnad in week 1 did a nice job filling in for Alex Singleton.
Yeah, very first play of the game.
Yep, a sack.
So on Aaron Rodgers.
You've seen guys step up. I think that's part of building the culture, right, is having a number of guys that can come in and perform, and speaks to kind of the depth that the team has at this point. And, we talked before the season about guys who are not necessarily household names, but kind of proven themselves. And, like, I think if you're, like, nationally, you probably know who Zach Allen is now. And a lot of people probably did before, but, like, now the casual fan is probably learning more about who Zach Allen is, for example, just to name one guy. And so, the guys become big name guys when they prove it. And I like the way the Broncos are playing so far. But again, just got to keep it going. And a big opportunity against the Raiders. It's last last win over the Raiders was 2019. Shelby Harris knocks down a 2-point conversion attempt. It was still Derek Carr as the quarterback at that point. And
what a time.
I know it was a long time ago. And that's like the weird thing about this one is that the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, and so that losing streak to some degree like made sense. Like he's just a really great player. The Broncos have obviously been in a kind of a transitional phase for a while. Have struggled, but the Raiders have also they've gone through a lot of head coaches, they've gone through quarterbacks, and yet they've still had
the number
win streak and had Denver's number. You got to end this. You got to make it a rivalry again, and just you snapped the streak to the Chiefs last year, snap it against the Raiders this year, start 1-0 in the division, and really, I think the team the last couple years, even I'm trying to think 2021 after the 3-0 start, obviously a long losing streak, and then trying to fight back from that. Or Vance Joseph's second year back in 2018, you're 3-6 and have to fight your way back to 6-6. Mm-hmm. This team for a long time now has spent time digging out of a hole and has not often been in scenarios where they're above 500 and just add to that record. With 3 of the next 4 at home, you've got to look at this as an opportunity to do that. And instead of being 2-2 and kind of going backwards from there, find a way to get to 3-2. Find a way to get to 4-2. Give yourself some, I don't want to say wiggle room, but just build on that.
Give yourself a lead so that.
Yeah, because you never know when there's going to be a tough one that you lose that's beyond your control.
Yeah.
And it also takes up energy and emotional bandwidth to consistently be trying to fight out of a hole. So let's see if the Broncos can start to stack that momentum, get closer to the groove that Sean Payton has said they're not in yet. He said he'll tell us if the team is in a groove or a rut.
Yeah.
Excited to see that. And I'm excited, Elisa, to see what this weekend looks like at home.
Yeah, it's alumni weekend. It's going to be a throwback to the 1977 season. The guys are going to wear the throwback jerseys. So many things planned pregame. So Broncos country, make sure you guys head out early to the stadium for that. Obviously, I'm rocking my my throwback here. And a couple of the guys talked about the excitement of wearing the throwback uniforms. Cortland Sutton probably had the best answer, I think, out of all of them. One of the things he mentioned, he touched on that losing streak against the Raiders, and he said, look, what better way to snap that streak than at home wearing these special threads? You never know when that next moment's going to come. And he's like, this game being able to get the win is great. Being able to get the win in these jerseys, he called it satisfying. That would be satisfying. And I think for a guy like Cortland who, has been with this organization a long time, been there for a lot of the ups and the downs, I think he's one of the guys, he understands this rivalry, and he understands that it's a deeper meaning, as much as players don't want to feed into that too much.
Cortland's been here a long time. I think he's only beaten the Raiders twice. I mean, that just kind of shows you, he was drafted in 2018.
Yeah.
The Broncos certainly won that one in 2019. I think the Broncos also won 2018 at home, if I'm remembering correctly. But once or twice.
Yeah.
He said you're not doing jersey swaps with division rivals. He gets it, but
he said it would take us very, very. He emphasized very, 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 very special person.
He wouldn't name who that was, but
no, he didn't.
But yeah, I think that's one of the next. There's a lot of next steps for this team in terms of how do you get back to the postseason, how do you get back to competing for championships, division titles, that sort of thing. But one of them is the division, and you can't. You just can't get swept by the Raiders and expect to do
what you need to do.
As Sean Payton said, I've never seen a team go 3-3 in the division and do anything, is really kind of what he said. And so find a way to beat these guys, do it in the throwbacks. They're painting the field to look like it did for the AFC Championship in 1977. Of course, a win over the Raiders. Randy Gradishar is going to get his Hall of Fame ring. Riley Odom, Steve Foley, two great players from that 1977 team. Obviously, Steve Foley, a member of the Orange Crush defense. They're finally going into the Ring of Fame. It's been a few years since we've had a Ring of Famer. And then, if you're going to the game, they're going to play 1970s music. They're going to have graphics packages. It's going to be cool. I don't think the beer prices are from the 1970s, but otherwise, it'll be pretty good. But yeah, alumni weekend's always fun, and I know it's a big priority for the ownership group. And
it's my first one. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I mean, you get to see all these guys come back, and this is, I believe, the first reunion for the 77 team in what, we're almost 50 years since that first Super Bowl appearance. So always nice to honor the past, and like you said, make a memory for the present, right? Like I said this on Broncos weekend. We'll see if it makes the show because I just talk for hours and hours, and they have to choose what to use.
That's what the podcast is for.
I know. That's why I'm going to say it again here in case you don't get to hear it on Saturday. But like, I think of Manning throwing 509 in the blue jerseys, and or like dominating Aaron Rodgers on Sunday Night Football in the blue jerseys. Like, you think of those moments, and you're like, okay, well, like, what if this is the next moment where Bo Nix goes off at home, or PS2 has a couple interceptions and a pick six. Like, this could be a moment that defines. You never know when it's going to be a moment that defines your season, and doing it in the throwbacks would be really cool. What do they say? Look good, play good.
Look good, yeah. Look good,
feel good, play good. So they definitely look good. The uniforms are awesome. I know people are disappointed. We only are going to wear them twice.
Yeah.
Got to find a way to wear the Navy alternate later this year, too.
Pat is one of those people, by the way.
I know.
Pat Surtain was like, yo, I want to wear these more than twice.
I know. I have, and I think they're awesome. I think they're great. I am on the train, or like of the opinion that if you wear them every single week,
they're not as special.
I think they just get old, or maybe not get old. Don't come for me in the YouTube comments, but
what you mean?
Like, they start to lose a little bit of the appeal, and if you wear them twice a year, then like boom, when you break them out, it's really special.
Yeah,
and so to me, it keeps, like you said, it keeps the appeal, it keeps like the specialness of it, and wear them this week and try to get a win, and then break them back out later for that Chiefs game, and I don't know, maybe get another one. So I
think the added motivation for those things. I mean, superstitions aside, like, it's not like crazy if it doesn't work, right? But it's, when you look at these matchups, like, you do want to see your best dress fits out there. And I think when I first saw the jerseys, the helmets alone, I was like, wow, these are really, really nice. Like, that was my first impression when I saw the colorway and I saw the helmets and how they all came together. I was like, I cannot wait for them to take the field wearing these jerseys.
The helmets are awesome. Love the helmets.
The helmets are just chef's kiss.
Now let's see a win in them.
Yes, that's what we need to see. But we also need to see Broncos country out there early, loud. Obviously, I know you guys are very excited that this team handled business on the road, 2-0, returning back again to host their first divisional game against the Raiders, the first of back-to-back home games. They welcome the Raiders this week. The Chargers will be next week. And I think that this is, like you said, the perfect opportunity for them to really kind of get things going. So we appreciate all you guys for listening and watching another episode of Altitude Advantage. I am your host and team reporter, Elisa Hernandez. This is our lead writer on DenverBroncos.com, Aric DiLalla. And make sure you guys comment. Make sure you guys put your questions in there. We love to hear them. We love to read them. Apparently, you like to pick fights. I'm sorry everyone loves you in the comments. So
I'll pick a fight. I'm not scared.
Well, we'll see what happens after this weekend. We appreciate you guys watching. Again, make sure you guys comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'll see you guys on Sunday.